It's great to be with you. Great to be here tonight. And looking outside, I can still see the sun outside. So I guess that's kind of cool. So yeah, I guess you saw the topic, the power of habit. Has anyone seen the book, by the way? Has anyone seen the book, Power of Habit? Yeah. It's it's a stolen power. Oh, Power of Habit is it's a stolen title. It's a book. It's great. It's great. You should read it. I'm not gonna summarize it or do it justice. I'm just gonna say my own little thing that I want to share with you. I was thinking to myself that as a young adult, I was kind of idealistic. I was probably a bit naive. And I think because I made the choice to dedicate myself to davening at a young age, I had a hard time understanding why other people might not be so serious about the whole thing. You know, I showed up to Minyan at college, and we didn't have phones in those days to like text other people while we were davening, but I remember seeing people finish all of Shemona Esrei in like 34 seconds. And I just had such a hard time understanding. I was so sincere. I mean, I was breaking my teeth over every single word. How could these people, daven like this? Of course, over the years, I've become a little bit more self-aware, and I've got lots to learn from a lot of people, and not to mention a lot of improving my own davening that I can do. But I actually realized something about these kids that davened in a minute or in 30 seconds or whatever it was. And the thing that I realized was they had habits. These people were given habits. They, their parents brought them to shul, and their teachers taught them how to daven, and they were habituated to it. And so, I mean, look, they were doing it by rote. Who could blame them? And as I started to think about it, I started to think that habits are perhaps not such a good thing. And maybe it's better to not have habits. Maybe it's better that we should just be really, really sincere and real. And I actually came across a Mesilas Yesharim that I think supported my view a little bit. The Mesilas Yesharim in the second chapter there is actually the Ramchal actually speaks about this idea of habit. He quotes Jeremiah, because Jeremiah talked about the evil of his generation, said, people they're like horses rushing into battle, meaning they're just going through momentum. They have this momentum of habit and conduct that he speaks about in the second chapter of Mesilas Yesharim. And I thought to myself, wow, this proves what I'm saying. I mean, Mesilas Yesharim is saying exactly my point, that habit's not such a great thing. And then then look at Judaism. I mean, look at what we do all day. Look at the Shulchan Aruch. I mean, from the moment we wake up, and from the Tfilas Yadayim until we say the Shema before going to bed, it's just our lives are built one habit after the next. And so, how can we deepen our relationship with Hashem if we're so habitual about it? And the truth is that there's a specific habit that we're trying to build during this time of year, and that is counting the Omer. And we actually start in the second night of Pesach, and we all want to be in this habit, right? Everyone feels like, hey, we want to get in the habit of counting the Omer because we want to make sure that we're in the habit, and that we're gonna remember to count, and we'll say the bracha every day. And so, but the timing of this mitzvah is actually a very great interest, and I think that it reflects a lot on the power of habits. And what happens is that our parsha starts to outline the Moadim at the end of Emor and Vayikra Chaf Gimel, starting with Pesach. And the Torah instructs us to bring the Omer offering and begin counting the days until the Shtei Halachem offering, the double bread offering, is brought 50 days later on Chag HaShavuot, on Shavuos. But when do we start counting? When do we start counting the Omer? So the Torah actually says, it's a very interesting phrase. The Torah says, I'll show you the verse right over here. I'm going to share on my screen with you. The Torah says, "Sfartem lechem macharat haShabbat." You shall count for yourselves on the morrow of the Sabbath, the day after the Shabbat. on the day that you bring the Omer. And that's kind of a interesting thing. What does it mean that we start to count on the day after the Sabbath? And our tradition tells us that Macharat HaShabbat is actually the day after Pesach. So the Sabbath in question here is not Shabbat or Saturday per se. It's really Pesach. It's really the day after Shabbat. It's the day after Pesach. It's just a way of referring to Pesach. But it's kind of a roundabout way of referring to Pesach. I mean, in fact, the Tzaddukim, who were people in the times of our sages that did not accept the validity of the oral Torah, they believe that Macharat HaShabbat literally means the day after the Sabbath. And so, according to their tradition, if Passover fell on a Tuesday or something, then they would start counting on Wednesday. Now, I don't know too many Jews these days who I'm sorry, I said the opposite. If Pesach fell on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, they would wait until after Shabbat. They literally waited till Saturday, okay? But the oral Torah tells us, no, we're not. Macharat HaShabbat doesn't mean the day after Saturday. It means the day after the Sabbath of Pesach, okay? And so if Passover falls on a Tuesday, like we did this year, we start counting on Wednesday. So look, obviously the oral Torah is very foundational to how we approach everything, but it's like a roundabout way of referring to Pesach. I mean, gee, what else could the Torah have said, right? If the Torah wanted to say the day after Pesach start counting, it could have said Mimacharat Yom Tov, Mimacharat HaChag, on the day after the festival. And so we have to kind of understand this. I mean, why refer to this day as the day after the Sabbath? And the Maharal of Prague asserts that the nature of Shabbat, of any Sabbath, anything that we refer to as a Shabbat, is that we cease. Right? Does anyone know what the word Shabbat literally means? What's the root? What does the root of the word Shabbat mean? Anyone want to type in the chat box? One meaning is lishbot, to cease. And so the Maharal actually says that on a Shabbat, we cease from the work of the week only to begin accounting anew. What do we start counting after Shabbat? After Shabbat, we start counting the days of the week. Sunday, Yom Rishon, is the first day. And so anytime we have a Shabbat, it's a time that we stop, we cease, and we begin counting anew. And so it is true that Pesach is a Yom Tov, it's a Chag, it's a joyous day. But when we refer to Pesach as a Shabbat, we are referring to a specific aspect of it. We are referring to the fact that this Chag is a cessation. We cease from the flow of life. And there's a joy in this. And it's not only a day of joy, but we stop the winter months and we start something new, a new cycle of counting. And so the whole connection between Pesach and Shavuot 50 days later is based on counting. And counting really reflects an inner yearning that we have. As we mentioned, on the 16th day of Nisan, we bring the Omer, the barley offering, which was a typical animal food. 50 days later, when we brought the Shtei Lechem, that was a bread offering made of wheat, a more refined human food. And so the longing that we feel in this time, as we progress from Pesach to Shavuot, from barley to wheat, is a longing to be more human, to be more deeply human. It's funny, the other day I was with my daughter at Hayhurst. We were feeding the goats over there. There's about 5 or 6 goats. We were feeding them. And we had some leaves, and my daughter would stick the leaves in the mouth of the goats, and like every time he fed a goat a leaf, like the other one would try to box him out, and you know, if you fed this one goat, he'd want it over and over and over again. And you know, I just saw the way these goats are eating, and I thought, well, this is why we want to be human. Like it's different to be human than it is to be an animal. And you know, we have both inside of us, But as we're going from the freedom of Pesach to Matan Torah of Shavuot, as we're going from the Omer barley offering to the wheat bread offering, we're trying to become more human. And so what we have to do is we have to have a moment of ceasing. We end our past cycles, and we kind of get to this point where we identify how in a way we want to grow, how we want to be human in a more deep way. And I think one of the great things that whenever we're progressing, as long as we're making progress towards our goals, there's a great joy in that, because we feel that we're getting closer to touching a deeper part of ourselves. And so this is a great time to build habits, to find those habits that touch upon those deeper part of ourselves. I'll just give you an example. I've looked for so many years. I've had a big connection with halacha, right? But I get so busy working, I don't have time to learn halacha. I'm just too busy with life. And so with coronavirus, I made a commitment that every morning before I daven Shachrit, I'm going to learn at least a page of the Mishnah Berurah. So I've been doing that every morning, and it feels like I'm touching something that's new, that's different, that I haven't touched in myself in a while, because I'm being so consistent with this. But wait, hold on a second. Don't you remember that these habits are problematic? Jeremiah decried the habits of his generation. People are just habitual, doing everything by rote. Is habit a good thing or a bad thing? One of the advantages of Facebook is that you come across a lot of memories, and I actually came across a memory the other day. It seems like Facebook knows that I'm from Massachusetts. I don't know how it knows it, but it knows it. And I came across an old video of Larry Bird, a childhood sports hero. I forgot how insanely good of a basketball player Larry was. Good. He wasn't good. He was insane. It was just awesome. And I remember once, I mean, it didn't matter where he was in the court, what was happening. He could land the ball in the net no matter what. And by the way, he was the biggest team player, unbelievable. And I remember once when I was a kid, I saw an interview of Larry Bird, and he was talking about the thousands of hours that he dribbled and that he shot hoops in his home state of Indiana. And I was thinking to myself, you could kind of think that Bird was like forming habits, and he did stuff over and over to the point that it was automatic. And from that's the place that he could do such creative stuff. I mean, what a good NBA player might have to think about, Larry Bird didn't have to think about it. He had these ingrained habits. And because of that, he had this space that he was able to be in that was so creative. There was so much he didn't have to think about, that he was able to do this incredible stuff. And so, we ask ourselves, are habits good? Are they bad? Of course they're good. Of course they're necessary. But I think that we could think about a habit as a very powerful operating system. It's like a powerful operating system that we build into our minds and our bodies. Now, if our Judaism is reduced to habits where we do it all by rote, obviously we're lacking in a very big way. But if we use our habits to come to this place of creativity, then I would say that our habits are very powerful tools. I'll go back to my example of davening. I'm older now. I'm used to davening. I don't have to break my teeth over it. I'm very used to it. So I got a couple options, right? I could do it by rote. I mean, I could text while I'm davening. I know the davening so well. I could text an email while I daven. That's how well I know it, right? But on the other hand, because I know it so well, I could come to a new place of creativity. I could enter into it. I could come into the words, the kavanot, and what I'm really looking for. I mean, even the fact that I'm so used to getting out of bed in the morning, so I just do it. It's not really a question. And so there's a new opportunity, there's a new space of creativity that the habit can really create. And I mean, habits can be obviously in every area of life. I mean, they can be in davening, they can be in how we treat one another. it's interesting. Lo nagu kavod zeh b'zeh. Our rabbis talk about the students of Rabbi Akiva who died during this period leading up to Lag BaOmer, which will take place this coming Tuesday. And our rabbis say the students of Rabbi Akiva lo nahagu kavod zeh b'zeh. They didn't treat one another with kavod. They weren't accustomed. They didn't have the habit of treating one another with kavod. Someone recently told me a story. I don't know who it was about, but apparently it was a great rav, a great rabbi, and there was a woman who was the widow of a close friend of his, and he saw this woman at a wedding, and he walked over to her. She was elderly. She had a hard time walking and standing, and she stood up out of kavod to honor him. And as she did this, he protested. He said, "No, you don't have to stand." And the woman said to him, "When my husband was alive and you would call him on the phone, every time you would call him, just on the phone, he would stand up. Just to speak to you on the phone, my husband would stand up when you were there." And so this is a minhag of kavod. It was something that he was accustomed to do as a habit of how he treated another person, a great rav, with kavod. And that's a great way of thinking about all this. And so we're in this time. We're in this time of counting, of yearning, and counting always shows that we want to go to this place. We see this potential. We're not there yet, but we're joyously progressing towards it. And it all begins with this trek from Pesach to Shavuot, from barley to wheat. So where does the habit begin? The habit really starts with Shabbat. Mamacharat HaShabbat, on the day after the Sabbath. First, we have to have a Sabbath. We have to cease. We have to realize that we're in this headlong rush, and we have to find the space somehow to stop, just like we do on Shabbat, just like we do on Pesach, which is a ceasing. And we have to begin a new minyan, a new counting, a new yearning, where every day we're progressing towards something, where we see and we identify a way that we want to be more deeply and more uniquely human, and we're progressing towards that. I know that for me, learning that page of Mishnah Berurah every day just makes me feel more human, because, instead of like maybe just answering another email or being worried about, some little thing with work, I'm actually doing something that's building what I am. And it doesn't matter what it is. For me, it's learning a page of Mishnah Berurah. For you, it might be learning an English Mishnah, or studying a book, or some sort of habit of chesed. And so we take that habit and we meditate it on this time. We practice it until it becomes part of us, to the point that we don't need to think about it. Then we can become like Larry Bird. We can become the Larry Bird of Judaism. We're able to get to a new place where we get really, really creative, and we're free just on a new level. And in that new place, we can invent an even more beautiful version of ourselves.